Moonpig.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Moonpig Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Sam, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Leon. I'm your co-host for today. How you doing, Sam?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Yeah, so we've got quite an exciting one today, haven't we?
Yeah, today we're joined by our guests, Dan and Jake, and we're going to be talking about process automation and Moonpig's journey with it. First off, Dan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Dan, Danny, or Daniel, depending on who knows me. I've been at Moonpig now for, 8.5 years, I think it is. And started here when I as a sysadmin, looking after Tin and the e-commerce estate when it was on, in the data center and lift and shift, and now we're in AWS. So yeah, sysadmin started as sysadmin, and then my role is a site reliability engineer or platform engineer. Um, and yeah, it's quite a diverse role. Looking after the platform for Moonpig, lots of Terraform, bits of code, cost, security, monitoring, doing on call, all fun things that platform engineers do.
Cool, thank you for that. And Jake, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. I'm Jake. I also used to be on Dan's team as I'm going to say platform engineer, but I've since moved on to the web platform team, whereas Dan's on the infrastructure enablement team. But yeah, at the moment I'm working on like the core web platform, making should I say, upgrading to our React versions in Next.js at the moment. That's our current goal. And I guess we can start talking about process automation, which is where me and Dan did quite a bit of work. I'm going to say like it's been over a year now since we've done that piece of work that was the main enabler for the platform, I would say.
Yeah, roughly 18 months ago now or so, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So you both mentioned platform engineer while you were describing your roles and things. Before we get into process automation, what is a platform engineer? What role does that play in the team?
I describe my role.
Oh, I'm Dan. What do you do
I
every day?
just I always I don't know. It's like when being a sysadmin. It's sort of I always think it's like a jack of all trades. I looked after being a sysadmin at Moonpig. You're looking after a bit of VMware, a bit of switches, a bit of the phone system. It's just a very diverse role, and I think what is a platform engineer? And a platform engineer, in a way, it seems to be similar to a sysadmin, but now introducing AWS, Azure, configuration as code, more pipeline, more CI/CD, more coding, basically, more whereas before, I'd say the sysadmin role was a lot more PowerShell heavy and console driven. So it's a lot more it involves a lot more trying to look at things and how we can automate things and things as code, I'd say, and cloud.
So you've seen the shift, haven't you, throughout your 8 years that you've been here, haven't you? And
Yeah.
you've kind of seen the shift of someone that's writing a load of PowerShell scripts, maybe even plugging things into boxes and stuff through to
Yeah.
kind of working in the cloud now. And like you said, bit more scripting, bit more programming kind of thing.
Yeah, I think even myself matured from when I started to where I am now in terms of it's just much more robust in terms of the processes and the way that we do things. Things are always they're a lot more transparent. Everything's recorded. Everything goes through GitHub and the CI/CD, and things are approved and agreed. When I started, I mean, things were approved and agreed, but the voice and it was yeah. It's like I think the maturity's been in terms of the technologies that we use and how we implement them and how we keep things more robust by using by doing things in code and keeping them repeatable.
correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but like the majority of like the platform engineering role, like is mostly Terraform, would you say? Like when we worked on the team, we mostly did like
Yeah, so a lot of it is Terraform, right? And it is using Terraform to plug in the different various AWS services, connect the different disparate parts and like Lego pieces, right?
yes.
And that's something we at Moonpig we try to do, right? We try to limit console access, right? Everything should be done through code. Everything should be done through a pipeline. Everyone can see the changes that are happening, and it's transparent to each and every person in tech in the org. Um, so yeah, a lot of Terraform, some coding, various little lambdas to help with different parts of the platform.
So for listeners out there that haven't heard of Terraform before, what's the 30-second pitch? What's Terraform?
Before there was infrastructure as code, you would probably just go into the Azure or AWS console and click a lot of buttons. But then, so that's got a lot of cons that come with it. If your website, for whatever reason, goes down or like hard down, and it's due to a deployment issue, you can't easily replicate the same state you had in AWS or Azure or whatever cloud provider you're using. So using something like Terraform would put your infrastructure in a well-known state. Whereas if you're clicking buttons in the console, you probably would have had to write a load of run books to put things right.
I think it's the way of describing what you want and saying, "Go give me that thing," and you don't have to. And it's templated, right? That you can copy and paste that for different environments and just parameterize it, right? You don't have to be clicking in different consoles all the time to try and make the same environment. It gets rid of silly little errors and it lends itself to being repeatable and hopefully stable to somewhat.
Yeah.
So something you would have to do as a sysadmin by pressing a load of buttons, you've now got Terraform to actually do all that provisioning of the infrastructure for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I still speak to a lot of old colleagues that do, still are sysadmins, and there is definitely they don't use configuration as code as much as we do at Moonpig, and it's always something I try to say that it's something that they should strive to do. It just makes things so much more, so much. Like all made in those processes, it helps so much with consistency and reliability.
And would you say, like, because we used to use Ansible, Dan, would you say that's sort of a stepping stone towards like Terraform? Like it's not perfect because it's not defining all your resources as code per se, but that runs scripts to provision.
Yeah, so I think I can't. I do struggle to remember, but I mean, obviously, Ansible says go similar to Terraform, but Terraform records state and Ansible doesn't. So I do know there's some arguments online for one versus the other and the pros and cons, but from what I recall, Terraform maintains a file, a JSON object file of what it knows about, and Ansible doesn't. It's like a go do this, go do that, and that idempotency. But yeah, sorry, Sam.
No, I was just going to say it's interesting hearing about the history of Moonpig via like from Ansible to Terraform. I think that is something that comes up really strongly in this process automation piece. So I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about what the platform infrastructure enablement team is. Why don't we start with you, Jake? I guess you must have an interesting perspective since you've moved to a different team since.
Yeah, so I guess like the enablement team, one of the core purposes of that team is to make like the deployment of infrastructure easier for everyone else. So like building some of the core Terraform modules, like a lot of people are using the DNS modules that were written by that team or former teams. I think it was written by DevX maybe, but moved to that team. So looking after those modules, that's super important because it makes the DNS gets really complicated, and that using those modules simplifies it quite a bit. So that's one thing because we do a lot. Is it called delegation, Dan? DNS.
Hosted that, yes, hosted zone delegation.
That's the one. So we do a lot of that within that module, which other engineers at Moonpig might not know about DNS delegation. So it simplifies a lot of that for them by using that module.
But also, I guess one of the things with Terraform, going back to one of the strengths of it, is although it simplifies it to them, it doesn't hide the complexity. So the engineers are also welcome to look at the Terraform to see why we've done what we've done and how we've done it versus, if you just do something someone in the console and there's nothing to describe that other than, maybe some documentation floating about somewhere. So that's one of the benefits, I think, of Terraform, that documentation piece.
Okay, great. And so speaking a bit more about the team that works on those kind of Terraform modules and these kinds of looking after the platform types things.
Yeah.
What is the reason for this kind of process automation that we're going to be speaking about today? Dan, why don't you go first?
I guess it's with infrastructure enablement, us and sort of DevX and stuff, we're all part of that enablement function. There's quite a bit of crossover between different things that we do and deliver. But I guess at the core and the crux of it is that we're trying to help the rest of the tech do what they need to do without having to worry about too much, right? They can do the coding, they can plug into different modules that us or DevX observability have provisioned, so that they can get down to doing the core requirements of the business, and not worrying about all the infrastructure type of bits and pieces.
Yeah, and I guess we have a mantra at Moonpig where we say you build it, you own it. I guess the infra team is there to make the building part a bit easier. Like the teams are still owning what they build, but
I guess like you say, we own the part where with in terms of the account vending and the provisioning of the accounts and pipeline permission roles and all that, all the baseline for different accounts. So that's one of we look after all that as well. It's just to enable the onboarding of engineers into Moonpig to utilize AWS and all the other services that we use and consume with as much ease and little complexity as possible.
So in terms of process automation, are there any examples of things you've done? You were talking stuff you've done about a year and a half ago. Do you want to delve into that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I guess this came up in our, what's it called, Dan? Roadmap planning, or it was an ideation session we were running, like how to make the platform better. And one of the pain points of our team was that we've got this Slack channel called Cards Platform, where we get tons of requests for basically for one of us, because we have admin, to go into an account and do some manual process for various teams. And a lot of the time it was because teams often want to refactor their Terraform modules to make them nicer for various reasons. So we had an idea of, rather than us just going in with admin and going and changing resources left, right, and center, how do we enable the engineers on various teams to be able to do that themselves? Obviously, we can't give everyone admin because we try and follow the permission of least privilege permissions. So we had the idea of why not give access to particular ARNs in our case in AWS. So we rolled with that idea, and we thought, what's the least amount of friction to bring this idea to life? And because people were going into that Slack channel, we thought, why not make a Slack bot that allows them to do that?
Yeah, I think like, to add to what Jake said, is that even prior to Jake joining, and there was as part of the migration to AWS, we had a platform channel, and that platform channel was for people to ask questions about the new platform, support on different parts of the platform. How can I do this? How can I do this? I've mucked something up in the pipeline. Can you go into the console and can you fix this because X has gone wrong? And it drained a lot of engineering time. Like could consume it. It was that bad that we had a designated person on call every day and rotated due to the amount of requests. And obviously as the platform matured and as people got used to the platform and all the different nuances and what was good and what was bad, and they learned that those problems gradually subsided, but there was always that lingering amount of debt, I think, that we had to cope with every day. And a bit like, and as Jake was saying, like at Moonpig, we try to push we don't other than certain level of environments, we don't allow engineers to log in, do stuff manually in the AWS console. We force or try to encourage the behavior to everything goes through the pipeline, so it's transparent, auditable, it's consistent. I can tell you many examples of how going into the console can lead to very, very bad things. And hidden things, and it just mucks about the Terraform and everything else. So we would get queries come to platform help requesting X. We'd have to then, just because we had permissions, we would then pair with that person or go and do it. And a lot of times it'd be silly things that the engineer who sometimes had better context, it was their account, their domain. Had better awareness for. So we decided, like as Jake was saying, how could we offload that to the engineer also whilst empowering them, but keeping it like specific and prescribed and to a specific ARN. How do we reduce the blast radius of them doing something destructive in a prod account, etc. So that would come up in one of the sessions. And one of the really good things about working at Moonpig, I think it's a fantastic thing, is that we get given L&D days or time for us to go and read about a topic or test something out, right? Or like a bit of hack something out and is this idea good? And then bring it to the table to the team, say, I've learned X, we can do this now.
So kind of like the Google 20% time, I guess, that's quite famous or was quite famous back in the day.
Yeah. So I think we had our little session, and then we utilized, and I think to great effect, some L&D time to sort of POC and test out our escalation bot, which I guess we'll talk about in a second.
So this was primarily then, just to recap, you felt that as the new platform was maturing, the engineers were coming in and have to make little changes in production just because something might have been set up slightly wrong or something, and you would find yourselves as the platform team, sysadmins, if you like, were becoming a bit of a bottleneck to that. Plus also because they knew what they were doing, they were just dictating to you what to type effectively. So why not introduce a way of actually elevating the permissions briefly, very targeted, like you say, and then de-escalate that permission afterwards. And it's very much what am I thinking? Keyhole surgery almost. It's like going in, getting out kind of thing. Yeah. And it sounds like you had a lot to learn from that, or actually even making that happen. So you took some L&D time out to actually. What did you teach yourself, Dan?
Everything. I mean, like, I guess, and the reason I partnered up with Jake is because Jake obviously is, hugely knowledgeable, as a dev and, all things AWS. And, I had no idea in terms of, I know AWS, I know Terraform, can do pipelines, etc. My coding wasn't, still isn't the greatest, right? It's not something that I do on a day-to-day job. So, it was for me. It was a good way of saying, "Oh, why don't we run with this idea?"
It was a good thing actually, like to have that L&D time, like to do the idea, because it wasn't officially part of our roadmap at the time. But we thought it was a really good idea that could help us save time to do more enabling things rather than just helping people like yeah, as Dan was saying, like keyhole surgery, pairing with devs that already knew what they wanted to do.
Had anything like this been done before, kind of automated Slack bot kind of thing? So could you describe what a Slack bot is then?
Yes, so a Slack bot is where you can run a slash command. So we do have like other Slack commands for various things, like creating components within accounts, which allow teams to deploy things through pipelines. So we got the idea like to do a Slack bot through those, I think, because they were already existing. But it's basically a command. You can type into the chat box in Slack like what the command is and pass it some parameters. I think it's the technical term for it is called chat ops.
I've never heard of that one before. That's interesting. I've heard of ClickOps and DevOps, but never ChatOps. That's a good one. So why don't you talk us a little bit more through the specific example? So the permissions escalation bot. You kind of mentioned it's a way of getting away from people having a huge blast radius and being able to do very specific things that they have domain knowledge in. Can you speak to us a little bit more about that, maybe?
Yeah, I guess so. Obviously, we had the idea, courtesy of Moonpig's L&D time, we were able to explore that idea without any expectation and stuff, which allowed us to try different things and then we decided, well, we've already got these other templates, right? We do some of this sort of stuff in Moonpig already. Most of them engineers at Moonpig interact with Slack like more than they would do with any of Gmail or anything else, or it's the main portal, the main window other than probably coding. So it's like, how do we extend Slack to them to allow them to get into AWS with a resource that they need to do in a prod or UAT account without context switching coming to us context switching. And so yeah, we explored the idea of okay, if we do a slash command which says here's an ARN and here's a reason, and then it goes to a Lambda and it kicks off some processes where permissions are assigned, and then they're given back that information, and then they can log on through the SSO portal. Like, will that work? Like, how does that look? Like, is it friction free? Like, is it secure? Like, do we need approvals? Do we not need approvals? Who approves it? Who does? So it's like So it was going through that process of trying to make everyone's life easier with as little friction as possible, but also, I guess one of the things we also didn't want to encourage, I don't want to say bad behavior, but we didn't want abuse of the bot, like where people were circumventing pipeline, things they would have done through pipelines, like running a script or put it like to, and keep requests and keep escalating. So, but also we didn't want to seem like the police. We don't want to seem like we're the gatekeepers, and we and we've got to deny you. And so there was a lot of to and fro about how do we make it as pain-free as possible, but but just enabling them to serve and us to approve. I think we explored them ideas for quite a bit of Jake before we actually started doing the coding, getting it all out there.
Yeah, and I guess one of the pros of it being in Slack is like you can quickly have a conversation like why do you need to admin on this thing in prod, and then you can quickly gauge you need it for there's an incident. Fair enough. We need to bring the website back.
And I think that's one of the things talking about these asking for like admin on a resource or get it in prod or something. It's like how do we audit this? How do we make like do we use DynamoDB? Like do we put something in a bucket somewhere? Like how do we keep a track of this person approved this at this time and we've logged it and they've done X? Do we also capture CloudTrail logs around that to make sure that we've got a history of that process and what happened? Or
so all the stuff beforehand you'd have to remember to audit, or best make a note of who requested this, why they want it, what they actually did. Suddenly, because you're doing this through code, effectively, you suddenly got access to all this stuff in the CloudTrace logs, for example. You can get them from somewhere, store that somewhere. You're auditing all the time, aren't you? It's not you don't have to remember to audit it. That's part of the process. So how does it work then? So let's say I come in and I need to fix something in pod because like Jake said, the website's gone down. Do you both get what? Do you Dan get a notification? Your team, do they get a notification explaining what I want and why I want it?
Yeah, so in its current incarnation, it's a Slack mention to a group, and there's an approver list, as it were. And then there's I think it's a modal, isn't it, Jake? We fire up a modal, because I think that felt like the best way to do it, with an approve or deny button. And then once the approval has been clicked, a whole chain of processes go on in the background through Lambda, using identity sensor to deploy permission sets, recording the reason and the username and the approver. And then that all comes back. That we return that, don't we, with a link, because I think AWS didn't do a link, but now that they facilitated, we can give them a link back, so they can then click to go straight to that permission set in that account, right? Yeah. And as part of as part of that whole process, we also have a de-escalation process, as you alluded to early on, in that we don't want someone to have the credential, the permissions to the specific ARN for a protracted amount of time. So we limit it. At the moment, it's hard coded. It's an hour, and there are faults around parameterizing that and giving people a little bit more flexibility. So then there's a whole nother Lambda that gets kicked off by CloudWatch events, and then that de-escalates, removes it all, and then everyone's back to normal. So it's trying to create that like Jake said earlier, least privilege, making it audible. Because like you said earlier, when we did stuff in the console, we would track it. And how would we remember who did what did? We'd have to look at CloudTrail logs, search Slack. The archaeology of it all becomes a lot harder versus using the Slack bot.
And if I forget to de-escalate myself, it happens after an hour anyway. So.
It's fundamentally out of your control. It's all automatic.
Cool.
And we've mentioned something a couple of times here, that the principle of least privilege, which I think is a super interesting one. One that also comes in hand with that is the principle of just-in-time access. Jake, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that, because this bot also enables that, right?
Yeah, it does. So, like, by default, I think all of our engineers have read-only access in each of the accounts, and you've got a set amount of permission sets that we prescribe in AWS Identity Center. But as you were saying, like, you can instantly get access to a single ARN and have full ability to do whatever you want to that ARN for an hour. So when you run the Slack command, it will provision a new permission set, as Dan was saying. And it gives you full access just in time. So yeah.
I was just going on with just in time. Some of the other things that we've been thinking about with a bot at the moment, we do it for small bits and pieces, right? Like generally, someone's an SQS queue. There's a message they need to look at that queue, or generally the bot's not used for massive big things. People, the engineers at Moonpig are really good at keeping things obviously in the pipeline. Everything, always code, etc. It's silly little things that they need quick access to. But one of the things with a just in time, we were thinking, and we're looking to extend the bot hopefully eventually, is that specifically for incidents. At Moonpig we have a group of people who are on call. They have full admin. Should they have full admin at all times, or should they use the escalation bot to escalate only when they need full admin? Is there room? We want to think about extending it, so if there's an incident out of hours and you can't contact X person, can someone escalate their self via approval via management or some leadership to get admin in an account to correct X problem? So yeah, I think that lends itself that the bot lends itself to that just-in-time access.
And I think the approval process is really useful as well, because sometimes we want to make sure teams are doing most of their work through infrastructure as code and not just using this tool to literally make production changes without it going through a pipeline. So yeah, having like the infra team as approvers is really useful. So, and we can ask the right questions when an engineer wants to use the bot.
I think it's great as an engineer as well that you're kind of got someone to sanity check what you're about to do. That conversation is actually really useful. Plus, as well, you know, it gives you that sense of safety that whenever you're in AWS production, you know, you've only got read access at that point. You can't do any serious damage, but you're actually having to go into actually make the effort to actually raise your privileges so you can do more.
Yeah, I think one of the key things you talk about with the privileges and stuff, and I think one of the key things before is that, you know, the like the chance of error when we were doing stuff when an engineer would add platform and would say, hey Jake, got this queue over here, that queue, need this one, this message publishing here, or this has gone wrong. Can you get me this? And then you're setting, you know, I'd find myself going, okay, is it definitely this? Sending a screenshot, you know, and there's so much room to go off piece, and you know, thankfully, none of us have ever done anything wrong and caused anything catastrophic. But the chance of that happening is greater than using the bot. The bots, it gives the engineer the power after the approval, after they've openly spoke about what they need to do, so they've thought about the process to that one thing, and they get to do it, and they know what they need to do. So I think yeah, reducing error and also like them waiting, right? Them waiting around to be served by someone who also has other things that they're doing, and then they've got a context switch. So yeah, time delays and errors.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got a really interesting kind of integration here, and it sounds like there's a lot of use to it. So I guess this must have saved quite a lot of time from engineers. Jake, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So since when we first pushed out the bot and let people use it, I'd say we've saved like hours and hours of time. Previously we would have had to pair with an engineer for at least 15 minutes, depending on how big the problem was. And that would you've got all the context switching that comes along with that. And it didn't give us the same amount, the time to enable other parts of the platform. I think having that time is precious, rather than just helping with refactoring state files. I think the time spent to enable the platform is amazing.
Sometimes I think engineers would throw things over the fence. You've got permissions. I'm going to go do something, and they say, "Can you go do these things for me?" And then they disappear. And then you're sitting there going, "Oh, I've got to spend the next 25 minutes," and they're trying to unpick this, and so there's a way, and then they don't get no learnings from it. With context, we as the platform, the enablement team of context switched out of it, and so there's such a loss of time, a loss of learning. So I think would you say also, Jake, that by empowering them, not only have we saved time, we've probably saved them time, and we've helped them learn more about the different bits and pieces that they need to do?
Yeah, I'd say they get to learn more about most of the time it's Terraform state files, so they get to learn a lot more about how they work rather than just throwing it over the fence. And I guess we don't have to jump into their domain and try and understand how things work in their area as well, which is quite nice. So yeah.
It is taking that idea of you built it, you own it, you maintain it really to its logical conclusion, isn't it? You know, it's like you're enabling engineers at Moonpig to, in the right circumstance, elevate their permissions, fix something that a sysadmin would probably have to do and actually ask them loads of questions of the engineer to get an idea of how things work. And it actually takes the cognitive load off you, doesn't it? Which is really cool.
I think it's also about, it's that empowerment. It's placing letting people in tech know that we're empowering you because we trust you to know what you're doing, right? Like there's no babying or keeping people away from certain things. It's like we all know what the tech is. We're all very clever individuals, and responsible, and it's giving that responsibility to them to allow them to do what they need to do.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm guessing this bot is just the start of the process automation. What would you like to do in the future? What have you got any ideas of how you'd like to grow the escalation bot, or other things you'd like to automate in this way?
Yeah, I think what we currently have is you request for a specific ARM, you get an hour. It's all hard coded, and you get a link back, and you access the resource. One resource for X amount of time. So I think what we're looking to do, as it's been a success, and and over the last 8 months, is how can we make it for other eventualities, i.e., an incident, or can we give more time? We do maintain different support roles throughout the organisations for different teams. Going with the principal least privilege, should they all be gone? We don't need to manage all those roles and all those things. People can use the escalation bot for, I need X role for 2 or 3 days. It gets approved, and then they use that. So it's maybe the next step is allowing more time, allowing the ability to pick specific permission sets versus you getting a one ARN or one resource. So I think we're looking to how do we extend it? How do we make it, keeping it, secure, safe, but how do we extend it to engineering for different eventualities and different circumstances?
Cool. And I think it was quite interesting what you're saying as well, like for yourselves as platform engineers, would it be something you could use? So you've got that extra level of security that, normally I've only got these permissions, but if I use the escalation bar, I know that I can.
Exactly. Yeah. Should we as custodians of the platform, should we always have admin? Probably. That doesn't seem like a good idea, right? Should we only have elevated permissions when we need it? So it's also about playing back to feeding back to us as well, like, and how we operate as well. Yeah. So I think we can look at the bot to augment us as we go forward.
Great. Thanks, everyone. It's been really interesting learning about the process automation. That's it for this episode of the Moonpig Tech Podcast. So we look forward to catching up with you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.